You're listening to the Sticks in the Six podcast. Here are your co-hosts, Andrew Forbes, Peter Barricchini, and Alex Hobson.
Good afternoon, folks, and I know everyone's used to our Wednesday episodes, but with the summer going and life getting in the way, we're going to be kind of all over the place here. So we're gonna do it when we can and try and get on here on a weekly basis as we have in the past up until that August mark. But you are tuning in to episode 203 of the Sticks in the Six podcast, brought to you by the fine folks at the Hockey Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, here with my co-host, Peter Barricchini. And Peter, we got loads to talk about. We got a lot to get off our chest, and but before we get into all that fun draft content and the Marner trade and the new Leafs, how you doing this week, buddy?
Doing great, like you mentioned. Yeah, it's the beginning, literally with school ending last week. You know, this is now the official start of summer. It was kind of unofficially last week. I know you mentioned that, you know, Oak was excited to get the summer going right now. You guys had some good candidate plans as well. Me was a little low-key, a little quiet, working everything, you know, just writing here and there. I thank God that there is no massive 40-degree weather to start the summer right now, because the last about 2 weeks ago was absolutely insane. This is the kind of like summer heat that I am used to and I'm accustomed to. So I hope it could stay this way for the next 2 months, because if it's anything more than 40, I am not leaving my house, because I'm going to melt like a popsicle on the sidewalk.
Yeah, I try to think back, like a couple weeks ago, you and I were talking, and the AC was out at my place, and we had to get a new AC, new furnace put in, all that kind of jazz. And
yeah,
thank God.
We got it in time just for that.
We got it. Yeah, my God, I could only imagine. I had to shave my head even being in the cold here. Like I was like, man, it's getting way too hot outside. But no, it's definitely heating up here in Ontario. And for all those, you know, happy belated Canada Day. I hope you guys celebrated in a safe and healthy way, and celebrating, you know, one of the best nations, if not the best nation on earth. So shout out to all those who celebrated.
I was about to say, walking around on Canada Day kind of felt like there was more of a sense of unity and pride. Saw a hell of a lot of Canada apparel, a lot of red, a lot of white. And I think, you know, where I'm probably going with this, with what's happened, you know, with certain comments from a certain president of the United States. I think everyone's kind of rallied around that.
Buddy, Costco's selling Canada Day shirts, or Canada shirts now. Like there's more patriotism right now in Canada than there has been probably in the last 5 to 6 years. But anyways, yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time to get a couple days off and kind of throw back and sit back with the family and enjoy. And obviously during that time, hockey never sleeps. We had the draft. We had a lot of unknowns going into the draft with the Maple Leafs. We had a lot of unknowns going into the draft with the top 10 in the first round. And, you know, there were some surprises. There was some interesting picks. And then, of course, free agency follows that. And the biggest thing of the offseason so far, the biggest thing of the Leafs transaction period, probably in the last 10 years. And we all knew it was coming. A sign and trade with the Vegas Golden Knights. Mitch Marner heads to the Vegas Golden Knights on an 8-year extension, with Nicolas Roy coming back the other way. I've got some choice words for not only the situation, but you know, people kind of bouncing back with, you know, taking shots at Leafs Nation. But before I get into that, I want to get your thoughts. Mitch Marner to the Vegas Golden Knights. Let it rain, buddy. Let it rain.
Yeah, as we mentioned, since the season ended, or even for a long time, this is like one of those breakups that needed to happen. It was going to be for the best for both sides. You even heard it from his press conference at the end of the season that it wasn't literally going to end well. And we kind of anticipated that this was going to happen. But were we going to let him go for nothing, or were we going to at least get something in return? And thank God we got something in return. I know everyone's going to look at this and be like, oh, Nicolas Roy for Mitch Marner, we got fleeced or whatever. I mean, Yeah, probably we would have liked a little bit more, especially when that whole tampering thing came out, because if I was Toronto, I would have asked for maybe just a little bit more to try and sweeten the pot, but not going to happen with sign and trades. I mean, we saw last year, Gensel got traded for a 3rd round pick. Essentially Maple Leafs getting a 3rd line center, a really good 3rd line depth center to fill out the middle of the roster. Probably could have gotten maybe a 2nd or a 3rd as well, but who knew? Who knows? I'm kind of happy with the pick or with the return that we got for Waugh, because as I mentioned, the Maple Leafs are getting a really hardworking center, a guy that's been there before. He has the cup experience. This is a guy that said he loves and thrives in the big pressure moments in his media availability. So there's something that, Maple Leafs fans can anticipate seeing, that this whole DNA change that Tree was talking about. You wanting to get those competitive players, wanting to get players that can thrive in big moments. And we'll probably get to this with Marner in a little bit, but I don't know. It just seemed like his end of season press conference, his conference with the Vegas Golden Knights, his words don't even ring true. It doesn't even matter anymore to this point. And I just don't know what to expect for him with the Golden Knights right now. I think they got the player that they wanted. Yeah, they could talk about how great of a playmaker that he is, but as I mentioned before, what's going to happen come playoff time? That's where fans of the Vegas Golden Knights, and I'm going to prepare them for this, because if you see this Mitch Marner that we saw in the last 8 years in the postseason, especially in games 5, 6, and 7, where he wasn't great, but even then the whole entire core wasn't great. Matthews had his moments where he didn't shine, Nylander, Tavares, whatever. But Mitch Marner was the one constant where it showed, and the frustration was building up with everyone in Leafs Nation. So you're getting paid $12 million. You're getting paid more than Jack Eichel. You're getting paid more than their number one center that has a Stanley Cup and has something to go off of in his next contract. And I'm pretty sure he's probably going to earn more than Mitch Marner, because let's face it, I don't think Vegas will be hard pressed to let him go or walk because of what he's done for that franchise.
Not as high totals though as Mitch Marner. Worth noting.
I think fair enough.
Marner might be your top player on that team right now.
Absolutely. Point wise, there's no doubt about that. But when you're going to be making $12 million in the playoffs and you're only going to put up, middling numbers that doesn't reflect a $12 million player, and I've mentioned this and I wrote about this, you are going to have all eyes on you once again, and there's going to be talk about you. Yeah, you can talk about how Vegas is going to be a more quiet market where you don't have enough media pressure or, a lot of eyes on you. But when that happens, you're going to have the organization being like, hey, what's going on? We're paying you this money to be productive, and you're not. That's the fear that I think is going to happen with Mitch Marner, and I feel like it's going to follow him, because this is a guy that has improved time and time again in the playoffs, even this past year. In the postseason, I mean, you want to look at shot attempts. He had 41%. Goals for, I mean, he was on for a lot of 5-on-5, but it kind of piled up towards the end. But scoring chances for 42%. There wasn't a whole lot of production from Mitch Marner, and Jack Hahn, who was part of the Maple Leafs or Marlies organization previously in the past, came out with a 13-minute video from last year, and he reposted it talking about how he had decent numbers, but when you take the time and space away from Mitch Marner, that is when he's absolutely ineffective. When he's dealing with that physical pressure, when he's dealing with nothing to work with, he falters under pressure, and it gets to him, and it shows. So for me, if this Mitch Marner is going to show up with the Vegas Golden Knights again, and the system may work out a little bit different for him, he may have a little bit more free reign, but let's face it, there are going to be teams going on top, like having two guys on top of him, just like Florida did, taking away all that time and space, because we know how great of a playmaker he is. You negate him from anything, he's going to be virtually invisible. And I think that right now, with the fact that he's going there, it's great for the regular season, but wait until he gets into the playoffs, and then you'll see what Maple Leaf fans and what everyone in the media was talking about. May not be harsh criticism, but it's just been an absolute fact where Mitch Marner has been the least productive player in games 5, 6, and 7 throughout this whole entire time with the Maple Leafs. At least the other guys have been a little bit productive, and they stepped up here and there. but Mitch Marner has the worst production of the Maple Leafs in that time. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just giving a fair warning because of what could happen. He's got his money. He's got his payday. Basically the same contract the Maple Leafs are going to offer, but he chose not to. And the fact that the video came out, or the video of this came out in his press conference where he was talking to players mid-season about what it was like to live in Vegas. He already talked to Patches. He already talked to Revo. That instantly, and Sam McKee made a good point about this. You're in the midst of a playoff hunt. You're having a hell of a season right now, and you're talking about already leaving. That just shows that he was all in it for himself right then and there. Didn't care about the team. If he really cared about the team, he would have been focused on the task at hand, where you were already up 2-0 on Florida. Learn to close it out. Instead, you're throwing muffins up the middle of the ice in Game 5 when you're down 2-0. And that's the kind of Mitch Marner that Maple Leaf fans are going to remember more than the Mitch Marner from the regular season, because come playoff time, when you want to be a dynamic playmaker, he was an absolute no-show.
All right, buckle up. So,
got my seatbelt on.
I'm not going to sit here and criticize Mitch Marner, the player. Okay, so from a talent standpoint, this kid is pure talent. I watched him in London. I watched him in Toronto. This kid is pure talent. Is there some quit in his game? Absolutely. I think there is in every player's game, but it's hard to say there isn't. I mean, aside from maybe the Kachucks who are go constantly, like there's some quit in the vast majority of players' games when they go down 2-0 in Game 4, Game 5, or what have you, and throw muffins up the middle. Now, here's where the issue stands with me, and I saw a tweet yesterday that compared. I forget who it was, and I wish I could give credit to them, because this tweet actually like fueled a flame inside of me. They said that the Leafs fans are treating Mitch Marner the exact same way they got upset at Islanders fans for treating John Tavares. So I want to touch on that for a second, because there is a difference, and quite a major difference. In that last year of Tavares' contract in Long Island, there were conversations about extension. There were conversations. He did say he wanted to be there. Absolutely. There were people that called him a liar afterwards. I think at that time, with where he was at in his career, his wife getting a job in Toronto, there were some major differences in that. And there was still conversation between him and the organization in terms of trying to get an extension done. The extension didn't get
nothing
done.
with that with Marner.
There was Marner shut down conversation at the beginning of the year. Darren Ferris had no conversations with the Leafs throughout the season, and if he did, it was minute conversations about extending this player. Not only did he have conversations with Pacioretty and Reeves in terms of what it was like to live in Vegas, during the Four Nations face-off, his wife was having conversations with Mark Stone's family, with Petrangelo's family, with other players' family of what it was like to live in Vegas. This guy had 1 foot out the door at the beginning of the year. Yeah. Potentially last playoffs, he had 1 foot out the door.
He had already decided.
So he had already decided he wasn't coming back. Mm-hmm. So for him to sit there, his heartfelt Instagram post, shove it right up your hoop. Because everything you said in that was completely hypocritical. And for you to sit down afterwards and say, all I wanted to do when I got drafted by the Leafs was to win a cup in Toronto. You had an opportunity, and you had an opportunity to come back. 9 years, but you had an opportunity to come back where John Tavares took a $7 million pay cut after a 38-goal season. When have you scored 38 goals? When have you scored 38 goals? He took a pay cut. You had Matthew Nyes, a guy who's going into his first major deal, but second deal with the Leafs. He's taking 7.75. He's one of 5 players in NHL history under the age of 22 to score 25 goals and have 180 hits in a season. And he's taking 7.75, which when this contract expires, even in 3 years when the cap goes up to $113 million, which is projected, it's a steal.
Yeah.
You could argue that Morgan Riley took a pay cut, and he had an off year. Let's not forget he became a dad this season, like Marner. Yeah. So he had other things on his mind. He took a pay cut.
He showed up in the playoffs, though.
He showed up in the playoffs. Took a hometown discount.
Mm-hmm.
You have a 60 goal scorer, almost 70 goal scorer, who's getting paid $13 million. And the Leafs offered you $13.5. The Leafs offered you $13.5. We talked about it a couple episodes back when we said, you're hosting teams for dinners and conversations, whatever the hell you want to call it. You weren't, because you knew where you were going. You knew damn well you're going to Vegas, because the conversation from the beginning of the season was that you were asking other players what it was like to live in Vegas, what it was like to play in Vegas.
Well, it's also funny too, because apparently LA was supposed to be one of those teams lined up to sign up Marner or to possibly work something out with Toronto and to meet with him, and nothing happened. So there were other teams in the mix to try and get Marner. Let's even probably throw in like a team like Carolina or whatever that probably was adamant of trying to get Marner as well. No, nothing. The team that he wouldn't waive his no move clause for.
He knew way ahead of time that he was going out west. We talked about this 4 or 5 episodes ago. Marner's going out west. We knew no Toronto, he's going out west, because he doesn't want to play the Leafs multiple times in a season. Yeah. He's playing one in Vegas. He's playing one in Toronto. He's going to hear the Boo Birds all night long in Toronto. Hell, he might even get Toronto fever. Like he might get the flu and not play in the game in Toronto. Who the hell knows? But the fact that this guy went out there and said,
if you do that, though, that just means you're giving up on the fact that, you know what, you were probably in the wrong. If you can face the music and actually play your former team.
Oh, absolutely. All right. And I'm not saying that he's going to. I'm saying who knows? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But to sit down afterwards and write this heartfelt post about how all I wanted to do was win a Stanley Cup. You guys took a chance on a small forward, blah, 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 blah.
Means nothing.
You had an incredible opportunity to, 1, build your legacy, 2, become a Toronto favorite forever. And then, do you see how quickly he went to Vegas? He was there already. He got his jersey, had his family, great moment.
Yeah.
Had his press conference. Yeah, I wish I could have got things done in Toronto, but I didn't. And I'm going to jump back into '93 because my dad loves Doug Gilmour, and I he's always been one of my favorites, that he was able to go out there and really deter other players and annoy other players, and he was small like me. You're nothing like Doug Gilmour.
Not even.
Don't even put yourself in that conversation, because Doug Gilmour, regardless of the teams that he went to, and he got traded throughout his career, he signed in different. He played his ass off, and really, as outside of a high sticking call, which we won't get into, could have potentially gone to the Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Canadiens, and I can guarantee that the Toronto Maple Leafs would have put up one hell of a fight in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
You decided you are not a guy who's going to go out there and be a buzzsaw and annoy opposing players. We've seen you give it your all, and you're at the top of the game when you do. But we've also seen you give up on your team. I go back to, there was a post on,
that's what's going to be remembered more so now than everything else.
There was a post yesterday about all the videos of him giving up in the playoffs over the last 4 years, right? Like, and again, I'm not discrediting his skill, and you know what, to be honest, I think we all know the storyline that's going to happen. Marner's going to win a cup with Vegas. He's going to bring it back to Toronto, run it down the streets of Toronto, and thank the Leafs for the opportunity and getting him to where he needs to be to win a cup. We know the storyline that's going to play out. Let's not be naive about this. I'm not naive to sit here and say that the Leafs are better without him. I don't think they are. I think there's a DNA change, absolutely. I think bringing in a guy like Nicolas Roy, you got something. I think the drama of what was happening at the time with this Vegas meddling and all that crap, great play by Tree to go out there and try and push the envelope a little bit to try and get something back, right? And for Kelly McCrimmon to come out, Kelly McCrimmon's doing his job. He's coming out and saying, I had to go talk to Carlson. I had to go to talk to Thomas Hertl, tell him they're not getting traded. I had to go and, you're doing your job. I get it. To say you didn't meddle is complete and utter bullshit. I think there's that's going on regardless. There's tampering in every sports league regardless. For you to say you didn't tamper, like, again, take the words and shove them right up your hoop. There was tampering going on. We all know. If Marner was talking about what it's like to live in Vegas halfway through the season, we know exactly what was going on. Everybody, like, nobody's got blinders on in this situation. Mm-hmm. Now, for him to go and have his press conference and say, you know, we're super happy to be here, that is the most relaxed I've seen Marner in a very long time. And I don't disagree that he needed this change. I don't disagree that that Toronto needed this change. But I also think that you did it to yourself. When you came in here and you held out the way you did on your first contract, you came in here and you expected to be paid higher than a 70-goal scorer. Yes, you were a playmaker. Yes, you're incredible. You play all situations.
The being looked upon as God's comment.
You don't carry a team. You don't carry a team. Even in London, you didn't carry the team. You had Christian Dvorak and Matthew Tkachuk on your line, and you guys as a line made that team a Memorial Cup contender. So at no point in your career have you, maybe when you played in the GTHL or whatever the hell you played in, maybe at that point you did. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say he's a liar. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's a terrible player. I'm not going to sit here and wish him or his family ill will. Never, because that's not what we're here to do. I think the situation was handled poorly. I think there were some hypocritical comments that were made, and I think when it all comes down to it, the legacy that he could have built in Toronto, you know that nice Legends row out front of Scotiabank Arena.
Square,
Not every player has won a cup.
Mm-hmm.
You could have had your number raised in those rafters. You could have been a part of that Legends row. And you could have built a legacy in Toronto. And, you know, if cup chasing is more important, you know, by all means. And if it came down to threats being made by locals that aren't true Leaf fans, if that was the thing, you know, by all means. If it came down to, you know, 2 playoffs ago when Matthews and Nylander yelled at him on the bench and he threw a minor tantrum, by all means. But at the end of the day, the situation could have been handled better. And for you to come out and say, I didn't want to be a rental, you knew damn well at the trade deadline where you were going. Mm-hmm. You knew it wasn't going to be Toronto. You hadn't had a conversation with Toronto. And then you decide to kick Toronto in the dick by saying, hey, you know, we can meet with you in the offseason as one of the potential suitors. That's what I say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I will say with the whole asking to waive the no move clause or whatever, I could kind of understand that because his wife was pregnant. They were expecting a kid. I could understand not wanting to jump ship right away because that is a tough situation. I will say that. But you brought up a really good point, and you posted a video about this. What if this was the point where Mitch Marner decided to leave? And it was Matthews looking at him talking, and it was the whole Nylander's just like the whole comment from the Amazon documentary where you heard that uncensored and unfiltered comment where both of those two guys were trying to do whatever it takes to win. And you see Marner just throw the tantrum with throwing the gloves on there. You see him barking at the bench of the Leafs where you're telling them to step it up. Meanwhile, your line as a whole gave up 15, 17 shot attempts in the first 10 to 12 minutes of game 7. And you had the audacity to yell at everyone else on the bench when you're not lifting a goddamn finger to try and turn the things around. Like, come on, man. Look, he needs to take a look at himself in the mirror and reflect on what failed in Toronto, where I can have success elsewhere. And I think maybe he was just getting too big for himself. I think the ego was a little bit inflated. I think the fact that he did held out, you know, he wanted to try and hold out again this time around, but Tree wasn't calling his bluff. There was a new GM. You don't have Shanahan to protect you anymore because he was the one that didn't want to trade him when his no move clause kicked in or beforehand. That was the biggest thing.
When Dubas wanted to move him. When Dubas wanted to move him.
Shanahan said no. So it's not even, you can blame Kyle Dubas for a lot of things. You could blame him for trading or not protecting Jared McCann and keeping Hall and Kerfoot. You could fault him for a lot of things. He wanted to trade Mitch Marner and get first, seconds, top line players, top 6 players in return. the fact that Shanahan was so involved in all this and he wanted his vision to come to fruition, meanwhile, 7-8 years into this damn thing and not one thing happened except for one playoff victory. I'm sorry. Like, again, if it was up to Marner as well, I'm pretty sure he would have felt that it was probably best for everything before his no move clause kicked in. But the fact that you had Shanahan lurking over to try and say, hey, don't do anything. And that's why I'm kind of glad with the whole new MLSE thing, you're getting rid of presidents. I do feel bad for Masai, though, because he brought a championship to the Raptors. But, like, Shanahan was utterly useless. He was literally micromanaging everything the GM was supposed to do instead of letting him build that contender. You weren't going to win with Marner. Matthews was a perennial goal scorer. Nylander was on the up and up because of that contract, and now he's basically one of the top wingers in the league right now. But it just comes down to the fact that his ego just got a little bit too big for himself. And it all started with that, this whole we're all looked upon as gods in the city kind of thing. No, we don't look upon athletes as gods. We just want accountability, and we want you to perform well to a standard where we can be proud of it. And we just haven't seen that from you in the postseason. Again, like I've said, Core 4 has had their moments here and there throughout the playoffs. We've at least saw Nylander take charge last year against Boston in Game 6 and 7, where he scored both goals in Game 6, scored in Game 7, coming back. Ultimately, bad goaltending from Ilya Samsonov was a difference maker. We've seen Austin Matthews in that series against Tampa Bay score key goals and set up plays. Mitch Marner, he was good against Ottawa, but when the physicality amped up and the time and space is being taken away, he was ineffective. What happened against Florida? First 2 games, Florida was caught off guard, but when they got their game and they were on top of things, Mitch Marner was ineffective. So, to me, again, it's one of those things that needed to happen, but Marner himself needs to take a good hard look in the mirror and say that maybe he needs to change the way he approaches things as well. I
realize you guys have been commenting, and we appreciate you guys tuning in and having your say. So we're going to get to a couple things here. Voice of Fans Canada, longtime listener, and we appreciate your support. Tavares appears to need Toronto more than Toronto needs Tavares. Yeah, I would agree, but I think it's the guy's still putting up 38 goals. You can't really argue that.
He's making Toronto his home. That's the thing.
Marner
it's not so much about one needing the other. It's just that he wants to bring something here.
Yeah, Marner had the Leaf PR team write that up. That said, Marner would have gone to Florida if it was economically possible. I think Marner got unfairly judged in Toronto. He'll feel it when Leafs win the Cup next year. I love the little throw in at the end. Go ahead. I think you're muted there, bud.
I'm a bit muted there. Yeah, sorry. I still feel like, even with Marner on Vegas, there's still a lot of unknowns. Goaltending wasn't great this year. You're still probably going to run that back. Pietrangelo on LTIR right now, so you're out one of your top defenders. Then again, you probably have that money and space to work with right now. Yes, losing 102 points in Marner is big, but Toronto's still well-balanced and equipped enough up front. They have their goaltending. They have their defense. Vegas doesn't really have all that right now. So I feel like Toronto could still make a further run than Vegas at this point, even with Mitch Marner. But that's just me. And again, we're still way too early because we're not even starting next season. We're not even training camp yet. But It's just what's mulling in my head right now.
Look, I'll say, like I said, I'm not naive enough to say that the Leafs are better without Marner. I think the Leafs had a genuinely talented player. This is not a knock on Marner as a player. And let's get that straight. Like I've been when Sundin was scoring goals and Steve Thomas was scoring, I was keeping track of stats on pieces of paper, like at my parents' home. Like I was a kid who grew up loving the Leafs. I'm not one of these jump on the bandwagon Leaf fans who's going to sit here and criticize Mitch Marner for the player that he was. He was an incredible player. I watched him come up through junior. He's truly, truly talented. And I get some of this is going to have to do with family. I understand that personally, and this is not a knock on anybody, but from a geopolitical standpoint, I would not raise my family in the States. Not right now. Like that's geopolitically speaking. And we're not going to dive into that because we're not a political podcast. Yeah. But that said, I'm I get this comment. Would Marner have gone to Florida chasing a ring? Absolutely. There was commentary that he was going to go out west far before the season ended.
Yeah.
Like that's the conversation that was already circulating. So, call it rumors, call it BS. Like there was some decent sources out there that were already saying if Marner doesn't go back to the Leafs, he's going out west. That's why I never trusted in the Carolina talk. I never really believed in the Columbus talk of 7 years at $14 million. There was Dallas, there was Vegas, and then obviously the sleepers in Utah, Anaheim, and San Jose. Yeah. So there was like 5 teams that he was going to go to. We shouted it out about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we said Marner's going out west prior to the 32 Thoughts podcast. We got it on the air, and I had a good source that let me know he was going out west. So I knew he was gone. So that doesn't surprise me. Doc, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. It was a divorce that needed to happen for both. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear us disagree with that. There's no question it needed to happen. He needed to go his way. The Leafs need to go their way. There was obviously you're never going to see like a Matthews or a Nylander come out and say, yeah, we're, see you later, sayonara, don't let the door hit you. They loved Mitch Marner. The what he brought to this team off the ice, he also tried to get the group together, right? Like that was common knowledge. But you can't sit there and say I did everything I could and I just failed. Yeah, I mean, like you're not the single scapegoat here. Like you want to talk about it, you want to talk about which how do I put this? You want to talk about how you failed and how you were a scapegoat for this team. You're not being victimized here. In past years, Jake Gardiner was victimized. He was a scapegoat. He was a guy that was put into a position that you're a top end player. You're going to be an Olympian. You're top
putting
of
up
the charts when it comes
points.
to
Expectations are going to be high.
Yeah. So like for you to say that, for you to come off as like you're the victim, like we criticized Matthews. We criticized, and personally, if I was a star athlete, if I was a professional athlete, which like, I mean, if you know my body type, I'm never going to be a professional athlete, maybe horseshoes or some shit like that. But like, I'm never going anywhere. I would want that pressure. I would want people to be hard on me and to hold me to that standard and to hold me to be the best that I can be so that I do build that legacy. Because you look at any player that's come before you in a Toronto jersey, like anybody who saw the YouTube channel noticed that, I made some content with taking down Marner's jersey on my wall and putting Dave Keon up there. And, it's more for content's sake than anything. But like Dave Keon's a guy who the team disrespected him. And he continued to be a fan favorite in Toronto regardless. People were begging Toronto. And it wasn't until Shanahan came in that Keon came back. But people were begging the Leafs to get Dave Keon back in here and to be a part of the alumni and to show up to games and be there and that's what you want as a professional athlete. Am I wrong? Like am I overthinking that part of it?
No, not at all.
I don't think I am.
Because even like I mentioned during the show, Ross said that he thrives in those big game pressure moments. Michael Pezzetta, who signed with the Maple Leafs, has been a journeyman in his career, AHL, NHL stops, not playing a whole lot of games. But this is a guy that grew up on Maple Leafs, and he, again, same thing like Marner, but Marner was put on this pedestal because of the production and because of his status as an elite winger. Pezzetta is basically going to be the fourth line grinder, AHL player, but this is a guy that's coming in where I want to win. I want to win, and I want to put forth the energy and the ability to lay it out all on the line for this team. That's what we want to see. Like, am I not wrong? Because even the way that Doug Gilmour played, he laid it out on the line. And I see, voice of the fans, which number 16 had a better legacy, Tucker or Marner. Darcy Tucker was a guy that laid it out all on the line, and he didn't care where you were. He didn't care if you were on the bench or on the ice. He would go after you and make a point. We saw the whole
blood, sweat, and tears, baby. Blood, sweat, and tears.
We saw that one where he's going after the players on the bench against the Ottawa Senators. We saw him level out Sami Kapanen, Michael Pekka, all these guys. This is a guy that wanted to win, and he didn't care who was in his way. Again, back then it was a little bit violent, but man.
But that team made it further. That team made it
one step further. Yeah. Conference finals, semifinals, again, kind of tailed off towards the end. But in that late 90s, early 2000s, they had cup aspirations.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I saw a funny thing on X, somebody suggesting that, when Marner comes back for his first game in Toronto, they retire Darcy Tucker's number 16. And then I saw another one where they were like, how quickly is Max Domi going to take the number 16? Anyways, it's like don't get me wrong.
Jerseys? How about all the Marner jerseys with the tape on it, just putting Tuck and then ER?
I know. I'm waiting for the Leafs to come out and say we're going to do a buyback program where we buy back the jerseys and just you can get a new name put on the back or whatever. Anyways, here's the thing. There is a lot of hatred out there for him. There's a lot of unsolicited hate for Mitch Marner. I think where we come from and where regular hardcore Leaf fans come from is that the hatred is not. It's not a hatred. It's a disappointment in the way that it all played out. And Doc came in here and he says, to be frank, if I was Marner, I wouldn't have waived either. I get it. You're privileged enough to get a no trade clause, and that was one downfall of Dubas's contract negotiations, was that he handed them out like Oprah hands out cars. But if you truly cared about the guys on the team, if you truly cared about the future of this organization, which he claims he did, he claims that this was an organization that he could see. That was the other thing in his press conference, is that you saw slow pokes at different aspects of the Leafs. While we could never get it done, we never got to that level. Not everybody gave it their all. Little pokes where it was like, man, these are your former teammates that stood up for you, played with you, respected you, helped you get to that next level. And you're basically saying I left because I knew we were never going to get it done. It just, I don't know.
Throwing the towel in like that just proves that you weren't cut out for it. You're giving up that easily. And if you wanted to come back and put that extra foot forward, then there would have been a little bit more respect for you. The fact that you gave up says a lot.
Did you see who one of the first people to walk into his press conference was?
No.
Paul Marner. Getting his own Vegas jersey. It just, you know what I mean? There's a lot of Paul Marner talking in Mitch. And I think that's, and then you also have Rachel Dory put it out here today. She said, what do three of the major contract issues right now, what do they all have in common? It was Sam Bennett, it was Mitch Marner, and it's Bowen Byram. What do they all have in common?
Their agent, right?
Darren Ferris.
And Darren Ferris is already threatening offer sheets with Bowen Byram right now. And I saw that. I'm like, where have we heard this one before?
And Darren Ferris loves to make noise. Don't get me wrong. As a client, that's what you want. As a team, you want to bend Darren Ferris over and But anyways, regardless. Last couple things before we close out this Marner conversation, because I think we've said our piece, and really I hope people understand that it's not a hatred for Marner. We know the script's going to play out. That we've seen in basketball where there's you're ring chasing. It's cup chasing. And anyways, I'll get to that in a sec. But voice of the fans, Canada. For the record, my favorite number 16 was Eddie Olczyk. What a beauty. Hashtag real talk. I love that. And our friend Neil over at Devil State of Mind podcast. If you haven't already, go subscribe to Devil State of Mind podcast. He's over at the Hockey Podcast Network. He does incredible work. Sup, boys? To be honest, you're better off with Marner. I'm hoping you mean without Marner. Now there's more pressure on other guys to step up, and I think that will be good for the Leafs. Just have to keep moving forward. You guys will be fine. Yeah, there's no question we'll be fine. I mean, hell, at this point, let's just cave for Gavin McKenna. Let's just do it. Let's just get it done.
If we had that first.
But no, the Leafs will be fine. They've got some depth now. They've got another guy who's gone on a cup run, who won it with Vegas. Nick Roy, I think, is going to add. Yeah, he's going to. Yeah, dude. Yeah.
Hearing Neil say that reminded me of Peter Brandt when he's talking to Billy Bean. You're better off without Johnny Damon, kind of thing. Right now, it kind of feels like it's that kind of, you're paying like $12 million for, or with the conversion, taxes and everything, $14 million. So there's that. But is it really well worth the money for what you're going to get in the playoffs? They're good for the regular season, but and again, with Marner, it always comes down to playoffs, and it's going to do the same, and it's going to be the same thing with Vegas. He could put up 110 points this year. Great. What are you going to do in the playoffs? It always comes full circle. And I feel, and I've mentioned this and I've written about this, it feels like it's going to come full circle again, where if he can't get it done, you're going to have another fan base saying the same thing that we are.
Yeah, and the way I explained, so my wife gave me shit for taking his jersey off the wall. She's like, "Why do you get these jerseys if you're just going to take them off the wall when they get traded? Because they always get traded." But the way I explained it to her is, one, great content, but two, it's like breaking up with a girlfriend, right? Like it's a broken heart for a little while.
You don't like all the memories and everything.
You don't like to see her with the new guy. And eventually you guys are going to come around in groups and you're going to be able to have a civilized conversation. I think, will Toronto Maple Leaf fans ever forgive Mitch Marner? Absolutely. They Raptors fans forgave Vince Carter. It took some time, but it's going to come around. I think, everybody does want the best for him and his family. Like, I think that's, at the heart of all of this, but, it'll be interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to watch and see how it all breaks down. Last thing, Gary K. This team needs some hate sometimes. 1,000%. I think this team's gonna play with a chip on its shoulder next season, and I like the fact that there were some digs by Marner in his press conference to say that this team just couldn't get it done. I like that. There's going to be a little bit of chip
material right there.
Absolutely.
Bulletin board material.
Last thing I'll say, once this contract is up, assuming that the guys below him don't make any other contracts, which they likely will, it's Crosby, Ovechkin, all those guys, Marner has made more money than anybody else in the NHL once this contract is up. More guaranteed money. So, for those who said it's not about the money, take another look. He's the highest paid guy on the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah, I mean it's a solid analogy, bud. It's a solid analogy.
We all saw that and just couldn't help but crack.
For those who aren't watching, Voice of the Fans Canada, Andrew, you're explaining a girlfriend breakup with your wife. Bad move, bro. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Zero filter, dude. That's why this podcast works, is because I got zero filter. I just say whatever the hell's on my mind.
That's why we're still going.
Oh, yeah. That was well said. Well said. Anyways, we're going to move on from the Marner stuff. We wish him well. Hopefully everything goes well for him in Vegas. And, as I said, we know how it's going to play out. But the Leafs did make a couple moves. Michael Pezzetta coming in, another former Toronto Maple Leaf fan, posted his picture on Instagram. We got another PJ boy in the Leafs room now.
We got him, Stevie Lawrence. We got JT right now. It's like hometown boys wanting to sign long term with this team right now. Right? Yeah,
it's great. But definitely a solid signing. Him and Revo have had their fights in the past. They're gonna put some things aside and get it done in the room. But Pezzetta's a guy who has a little bit more upside offensively than a guy like Revo. Can still fight, willing to fight anybody, and a solid depth signing for the Maple Leafs. Especially when you get into the playoffs and you're gonna be up against Florida again. Your thoughts on the Mike Pezzetta signing?
Yeah, I kind of feel, obviously it is a little bit more of a reassurance. Maybe if you do move on from Reeves or buy him out, what have you, it does feel like he does have a little bit more upside, but I don't know. It just kind of feels like they needed that a little extra they needed someone to insert into the lineup but could be willing to throw down and, get in the fights and everything like that. It does kind of feel like this could be, I don't want to draw comparisons, but they're kind of Noah Gadjevich kind of thing, or Jonah Gadjevich from the Florida Panthers, where maybe he's going to be that fourth liner, be a little bit tough, have that little extra muscle, and then score and chip in every now and then. Who knows? But it does feel like there's a tad bit more offensive upside with Pezzetta. He's got more speed than Revo. And I don't know if it's going to move the needle for sure, but if he is going to be a everyday fourth liner, you do want that kind of player. If he can move, if he can be aggressive, if he can get into the face of the opponents and still chip in every now and then, more so than Revo, I think it's going to be a big win, and it's at a decent cap hit too. So I'm not complaining for a fourth liner with that kind of money. But again, the willingness to be here, it's big.
Yeah, it's the Craig Conroy mentality, right? You want to be here. We're gonna find ways to get it done. Sorry, I wanted a big shout out to Neil as well. He just subscribed to the channel as well. So if you haven't, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are 4 away from 200. We want to get to that 200 mark before the month is up. So if you can hit subscribe on YouTube, thanks Neil for being 196, buddy. We appreciate
it, bud.
Gary K. Some people have compared Pezzetta to AJ Greer in his potential in the right utilization.
Fair enough. And Florida,
Yeah, that's a solid comparison. I like that, Gary. It's like I said, it's a guy who's got a little bit more offensive upside, can be that enforcer that you want on the ice. I mean, hell, in a series against Florida, maybe you throw him out on the first line to mix him in a little bit once in a while, just to give that little bit of an edge to somebody like Matthews and something, right? Like you can throw him out there once in a while and add that little bit of flair to that top unit. But definitely a big signing for the Leafs and kind of rebuilding that depth, knowing that the Leafs are trying to move guys like David Kampf and guys like Calle Jarnkrok for a top 6 forward. So definitely something to keep an eye on as we head into the season. There's been a lot of talk though that this is not going to be the lineup that we see once the season kicks off, and truly believe that. I know, yeah, Tree's definitely looking to make a top 6 acquisition. And saying that, back in 2023, January 2023, I wrote a piece about how the Leafs were looking at Matias Maccelli in a game where they went and Dubas went himself to visit the Arizona Coyotes, and I believe it was a game against Philly. I could be wrong, but anyways, I stand by it. The outside insider once again hits, and Matias Maccelli is now a Maple Leaf. Your thoughts on Matias Maccelli?
Okay, so the projection is right now he is going to be in that top line with Nyes and Matthews, and
don't make
definitely Maccelli is no Mitch Marner. He really isn't. But looking back, the last 2 years, but this year he kind of fell out with the Utah Hockey Club. I guess it was a different direction they wanted to go. He was playing bottom pairing minutes. Look at the numbers that he had before the move. 49 points in his rookie year and 57 last year, or in 23-24. He's shown that even on like a team where they were developing, Maccelli was a very big factor for them, the Arizona Coyotes, before they became Utah. I'm looking at the numbers right now from 23-24 and looking at like their expected goals for Maccelli. The most minutes that he had were with Krause and Bukestad, and they had a 51.5 expected goals percentage based on the amount of shots that they took. So that's a pretty, above average number. But looking at everyone else, I think Maccelli also played with Cooley and Genther. They were very limited minutes, but with 2 young up-and-coming players, with those 2 guys, 77.3 expected goals percentage. And that was only in 18 games, 25 minutes, so a small sample. But when he's playing with big star or big upside players, he can get results. And didn't show last year, but I feel like playing with Matthews, playing with, Matthew Nyes as well, where he's able to go into the corners. Maccelli kind of feels like he has a little bit more pace to his game, where he's not afraid to go into the corners and battle. we see him. I've even saw like a compilation of like all these passes and plays with the cross seams, cross ice from one side to the other, those east-west plays. He's connecting on a lot of those passes. And I think if Matthews is going to be in the right spot, and even if he finds Knies in front for those tap-ins, deflections, you name it, Michelli's numbers are going to increase. And we know he's going to be a playmaker. I feel like he's a Mitch Marner playmaker, but he's not going to put up those kind of numbers kind of thing. So he has the pace. He has the speed. He has the ability to cycle around in the zone and get players out of position. This is a guy that was I believe, a 4th-round pick in 2019. And, he's elevated his play to be more than just that. Like he was a solid guy for Arizona in the top 6 before falling out of favor last year. And, Utah is becoming a little bit more deep. They made great draft picks. They're starting to become a little bit more competitive right now. If you need to move on for him, yeah, they're going to be very scary.
Scary in a couple of years, man.
Yeah. And with all the picks they're accumulating and all the high-end talent coming up, you can still move on from players that you feel you don't need. And Michelli just happened to be one of those guys. But it's one that the Maple Leafs are taking a swing on because it's a low-risk move because of the pick that they gave up, and it's in a conditional aspect as well. But if Michelli puts up the numbers that he did with Arizona before the move to Utah, that's going to be a huge win, no matter how you look at that. And by comparison, could probably be it's definitely going to be a little bit cheaper instead of signing a guy like Nick Ehlers, where you do have a little bit of injury concern, where they kind of feel like the same player. And Ehlers may have a little bit of a better shot, but Michelli definitely has a lot of offensive upside that can make an impact on this team, especially on that top line, if the projection is going to be right for that.
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, 49 points in his first full season, 64 games, and then 57 in 82. He hit 17 goals. So a guy that definitely has the potential to play. Let's not forget that earlier in his career, William Nylander was a 65-point guy, right? For 2 or 3 seasons. So I'm not even remotely comparing him, but what we said in the podcast before is Finns tend to know their role. And tend to play in any given role. So he lost playing time after the move to Utah. Injuries kind of played a role in that as well. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that this anybody who's comparing him to Mitch Marner is utter crazy. But the fact that he's a playmaker that can step into that first line role and maybe add a little bit of pizzazz to what Matthews can do and Knies can do, I think it's going to be an interesting fit for him. 2 things before we close out our Leaf talk with the draft here. Development camp. Stephen Ellis just posted this. Rhett Parsons and Matthew. Okay, pronounce that name for me. Halachar?
Lakar?
Okay. Lakar? Okay. They just dropped the mitts at development camp. So Leafs
saw that video.
Leafs have got some fight. So if you're not following Stephen Ellis, check him
out. DNA's coming in now.
DNA's coming in. Also worth noting that it's reported by the 4th period. Now take them for what you will, but it's reported that Nick Ehlers is expected to make his announcement of the team that he will be signing with today. So stay tuned on that as well. Nick Leddy was picked up by the San Jose Sharks, who have a ton of money to spend. They just signed.
Good bet.
I believe they just signed Orlov as well. Did they?
Orlov 6.5. Yeah.
So
for a team in that middle range where they're trying to get to the cap floor, might as well, right?
Definitely a couple good signings. Nick Leddy obviously getting picked up off waivers. Worth noting that gives the St. Louis Blues some room to maybe go after a guy like Bowen Byram, maybe. So keep that in mind as we move forward here. Gary,
and we know how well they've done with the offer sheets with Broberg and Holloway.
That's right. Matthews needs to drive his own line. Look at the Matthews Burton Domi for 2 years ago when he scored 69 as an 1,000%. 1,000%. I don't disagree. Like, you want him to, although you would like to see the 200-foot game from Matthews, you want him to see that. You want to see that next step in terms of his offense and the way that he carries himself. So, what we got here? Like LeBron, Ehlers is going to South Beach. I say he's going to the Capitals. Capitals are in the mix. They would have to move out some cap to make it work, but Capitals are one of the 3 teams. I believe it was Capitals, Utah, and Carolina were the 3 teams that were left over.
A lot of other teams too, like Toronto, Colorado as well. They're still in the mix as well. But then again, it kind of feels like Toronto may be out of it because if they're getting a top 6, they're going to try and make that trade. And that seems a little bit more likely than anything.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. Okay, finally, before we close out this episode, the Leafs NHL draft. I mean, any takeaways from the draft? I'm not going to get too much into it because there's a lot of depth picks, and right now it's. But any takeaways from the Leafs? Any takeaways from the draft overall? What was your takeaway from the 2025 NHL draft?
Oof. I'm just going to say that the New York Islanders already rebuilt their prospect pipeline by getting Schaefer, Steele, and Eklund. And you know me, I'm a big Kayshawn Aitchison fan.
Yeah.
You're a big fan yourself too. Yeah. So the fact that they got those
Dobson.
3 guys. Forget Dobson. Yeah. They're already in the pipeline right now. That was a big get for them. I still liked Montreal's move getting Dobson as well. Yeah, a little bit of surprises towards the end. I am happy that both Vaclav Nestersil and Riker Lee got into the first round. Lee was kind of teetering on that late first, early second for me. Nestersil, he's got that power forward size. He was going to move up. Jack Nesbitt going a little bit higher than expected was a little bit of a surprise for me. Those are just some of the ones that I really took note of. Carolina taking a big swing on a lot of the Russian players, including Ivan Ryabkin, whose stock has fallen, but he looked really good in their development camp as well. And to get into the Leafs, yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of depth picks that are going to be middle part of the lineup, bottom 6 kind of players. But I did the write-up, and it was the notion of being mean and competitive. And obviously the Tinas Luke Koblar selection was a little bit of a curveball because there were a lot of guys that I had higher upside on, like Nathan Bem, Luca Romano, a lot of those guys. They took him instead, but watching the highlights, it does fit the mold of where they want to go. Big body, he battles completely. His coach said that, he described, he calls him mean. He has this mindset where he doesn't like to lose. And you know what? Those are the kind of players that the Maple Leafs want to try and target. He's got great net front presence. He's got good strength. He can break free from coverage. He's got that reach and range where he can defend or fend off players, protect pucks very well. So I didn't like it at first, but I grew to like the pick because of how well it was that end of the draft and going into the 3rd round where he was kind of in that range. He was ranked in the 50s by Central Scouting, so well within that range, but I would have gone with other players, but, Koblar does fit the bill. I really like the Tyler Hopkins pick. I think that probably could have been their 2nd rounder because there's a lot more upside, a lot of potential room for him to grow, especially in Kingston right now where he could have an opportunity to step it up, where he's a really great playmaker, wants to utilize the shot more, so he knows what he needs to work on. So I'm happy with that. William Bell, the fact that he said that he likes to play or model his game around Tom Wilson and he doesn't care who you are, he's going to bowl you over and run past you. I'm a big fan. I'm already a big fan of William Bell. And there was already a comment. I already have the favorite already mentioned because it's a big Metallica reference, and you know how much I like Metallica. So this is by Andy Mingione in response to David Alter, who basically said William Bell, big man. And Anthony wrote, for whom the bell tolls. Obviously, Ride the Lightning, Metallica, that's a fantastic song. And I hope that's a nickname that's going to stick with him from now on. Harry Nancy, I, again, love this pick in this range. Great energy, relentless puck pursuit. Guy is battling nonstop, heavy on the forecheck. He one of the younger players in the draft too, so there's a lot of room for him to grow as a player and build up his arsenal of strengths, work on his weaknesses and everything like that. I do like the upside. I had him as an honorable mention in my final 128. So the first 4 picks, I'm really happy with the Leafs. The last 2 kind of took a swing. They did take Halakar. Matthew Halakar from the Kitchener Rangers, who just got into that fight as well. So
making a name, baby.
Making a name for himself already. I don't know exactly where he fits in the organization, probably AHLer, but if he's going to have that kind of impact, if he could improve, who knows what can happen. But overall, I gave them a C grade because of the first 4 picks. The other 2 kind of, one of those little darts on a board kind of thing. If they hit, they hit. If not, they're later round picks. You want to take those flyers. but I really like the first 4 picks for the Maple Leafs.
I'll say this. This is the one thing I'll say. It's the first draft with Mark Leach at the helm. Yeah. And he had a hard job not having a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. But I say give it a couple of years and see where these players are at. And when we look back on it, how did Mark Leach do? And that's what we're going to be talking about. So I think...
I was about to say, this is the guy that got Jay Gottinger, Jason Robertson, Wyatt Johnson in that first round. So this is the guy that built up the Dallas Stars to what they are right now.
He also was part of that Detroit team that drafted some late round gems as well.
Yeah. So really shouldn't argue with him because of how well he's able to analyze and value talent later in those rounds. And that to me was big.
I will also say my one surprise was Peter Andrianov going as the first goaltender off the board.
That was interesting.
I don't think many people did, but it'll be interesting because Columbus is had some conversations with them, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But and obviously they moved Tarasov to Florida shortly after. So anyways, that said, last thing, as we know, we don't always like to do this, but we'd like to pay homage to some of the key players throughout the history of the game. Alex Delvecchio passed away actually just in the last couple days here. 3-time Stanley Cup winner with the Detroit Red Wings, 1952, 1954, 1955. Obviously a big role player. He was a 3-time Lady Byng winner as well. And on top of that, 1,281 points in 1,550 games. Hall of Famer Alex Delvecchio. Our thoughts go out to your family, your former teammates, and all your loved ones. May you rest in peace. Outside of that, it's going to be a fun summer. No Marner talk. It's done. It's over. Marner talk is over.
Done with. Let's see what happens with the Maple Leafs and what other moves they can make.
Let's move on. As Neil said, let's move on. It's going to be a fun run. As always, guys, make sure you check out the Hockey Podcast Network for all the great shows, including the Devil State of Mind. Check out SeatGeek, where you can use our promo code. It's in the description of the episode for $20 off your first purchase. Check out BioSteel for 20% off your first, or 20% off your purchase. Outside of that, the draft is done. Free agency is well en route. The Leafs still have some big moves to make. And if you haven't already, head over to the YouTube channel, hit subscribe, and keep us rolling. Until then, we leave you with our friend Alex Hobson and his latest hit, 25.